My husband announced it like it was nothing. We were standing at the check-in counter of the Fairmont Chateau Frontenac, a trip I had planned for 8 months, our 12th anniversary, Quebec City in the middle of October when the leaves turn gold and the cobblestones smell like rain. I had reserved 2 rooms. One for us. One for our daughters, Lily and Sophie, 12 and 8 years old. He leaned toward the front desk clerk and said, with a smile I had never seen directed at me, "Actually, we'll need a 3rd room. My friend Danielle is joining us. She's already on her way." I stood very still. The clerk looked at me, then at him, then back at her screen. "Of course, sir." "And the name for the 3rd reservation?" "Danielle Moreau." He spelled it out carefully, like he had said it 1,000 times. Lily was standing beside me. She tugged my sleeve. "Mom," she whispered. "Who's Danielle?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because in that moment, I understood something that my body had known for a long time before my mind was willing to admit it. I understood it the way you understand a car crash, not gradually, but all at once, in a single second of terrible clarity. I smiled at the clerk. I took my key card, I said, "Thank you so much." And then I carried my own bag to the elevator. My husband had been with Danielle Moreau for almost 2 years. I would learn this later, piece by piece, the way you reconstruct something shattered carefully, on your knees, cutting your hands on the edges. But standing in that lobby, I didn't know the timeline yet. I only knew the name. I only knew the way he had said it. Danielle. Like a word he was proud of. I need to tell you something before I go any further, because when I tell you what I did next, you might not understand at first. You might think I was cold, you might think I was calculating. And maybe I was. A little. But mostly, I was a woman who had just had 12 years of her life reframed in 30 seconds, and I needed to think before I spoke, because I knew that the moment I opened my mouth and said the wrong thing, I would lose every advantage I had. So I said nothing. Not that night. I unpacked the girl's suitcase. I ordered room service poutine for Sophie because she had asked for it since we left Ottawa, smoked salmon and bagel for Lily, who was going through a phase. I tucked them in and kissed their foreheads and told them Daddy was just sorting out some things downstairs. Sophie asked if Danielle was a work friend. I said I wasn't sure. I kept my voice even and soft, the way you do when you are performing normality for people you love more than anything in the world. When they were asleep, I sat by the window and looked out at the St. Lawrence River. It was very dark and very beautiful, and I felt absolutely nothing, which I now understand was the beginning of me going somewhere deep inside myself where he couldn't follow. I did not call him. I did not go looking for him. I turned my phone to silent and I opened the Notes app and I began to write. I am a chartered professional accountant. I have been for 16 years. I am meticulous by profession and by nature. I was the one who managed our finances, not because my husband, Marcus, asked me to, but because he genuinely did not understand them. He was good at charming clients, good at shaking hands, good at telling a room full of people that his company was going somewhere. He was not good at knowing where the money actually was. I knew. I always knew. Our house in Westboro, the one with the wraparound porch and the maple tree in the backyard, was mortgaged under my name. My credit rating. My income history. Marcus had declared bankruptcy briefly in 2017, before we bought it, and the bank had been clear. His name could not be the primary on the title. The 2 cars were leased through my corporate account. His business, a mid-size logistics consulting firm he had started with a partner who had since cashed out, operated on a line of credit that I had co-signed. Not because I believed in the business, I realize now, but because I believed in the marriage, and those felt like the same thing for a very long time. I wrote all of this down in my Notes app, sitting by the window in Quebec City while my daughters slept and my husband was, presumably, in a room 2 floors above us with a woman named Danielle Moreau. I wrote it down not to make a plan. Not yet. I wrote it down because I needed to see it. I needed to look at 12 years of my life in columns, the way I look at everything else, and understand what I was actually holding. What I was holding was quite a lot. The next morning, I was already dressed when the girls woke up. I had coffee ready. I had found a bakery nearby that made fresh croissants and I had walked there alone at 7 a.m. While the city was just beginning and the air was cold and clear and nobody knew who I was or what had happened to me the night before. Marcus came down to breakfast 20 minutes late. He sat across from me and poured himself coffee like it was any other morning. "Danielle's going to meet us at the Plains of Abraham later," he said. "The girls will like her." Lily looked up from her croissant. Sophie kept drawing on the paper placemat the restaurant had given her. "I don't think that works for us today," I said. My voice was perfectly pleasant. "I've booked a horse-drawn carriage tour for the girls this morning and a spa appointment for this afternoon. We'll be busy." He looked at me. Something moved behind his eyes, surprise, maybe, or the beginning of suspicion. "Sarah, the croissants are really good," I said, and smiled at Sophie. "Aren't they, sweetheart?" "So good," Sophie confirmed, without looking up. That was the last real conversation Marcus and I had in Quebec City. I took the girls everywhere they wanted to go. We walked the Petite Champlain and ate maple taffy off wooden sticks in the lower town and stood at the top of the Dufferin Terrace while the wind came off the river and made us all lean into each other, laughing. Lily took pictures on my phone. Sophie held my hand even though she was 8 and usually too old for hand-holding in public, which told me she knew, the way children always know, that something was different. I called my sister from the bathroom of our hotel room at 11 o'clock that night. "I need a recommendation," I said. "Family law. Ottawa. Someone very good." My sister is a pharmacist, not a lawyer, but she knows everyone. She is the kind of person who collects people, who remembers every conversation, who could tell you the name of her dentist's brother-in-law who happens to do exactly what you need. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Are you okay?" "I will be," I said. "Can you get me a name by tomorrow?" She got me 2 names and a personal introduction by 8 the next morning. We drove home on Sunday. Marcus drove, because he always drove, and I sat in the passenger seat and answered the girls' questions about school and Halloween costumes and whether we could get a dog, and the whole 4-hour drive, I was somewhere else entirely. I was in my own head, very quiet, very precise, building something he couldn't see yet. On Monday morning, Marcus left for work at his usual time. The girls went to school. I made coffee, opened my laptop, and called the first lawyer on the list. My sister had given me a woman named Patricia Hennessy who had an office on Elgin Street and a reputation, according to my sister's contact, for being absolutely devastating in court. She could see me at 2 o'clock. I wore my gray wool blazer and brought a folder. Inside the folder was a printed copy of everything I had written in my notes app by the window in Quebec City. Plus the mortgage documents, the lease agreements, the co-signed line of credit, and 3 years of our joint tax returns. Patricia Hennessy looked at the folder. She looked at me. She said, "You've done this before." "I'm an accountant," I said. She smiled, just slightly. "Then you already know what you're looking at." "I know what I'm looking at," I said. "I need to know what my options are." She told me. It took 40 minutes. When I left her office, the leaves on Elgin Street were bright orange, and the air smelled like fall, and I stood on the sidewalk for a moment and felt something I hadn't expected to feel. Relief. Not happiness. Not grief. Just the clean, quiet feeling of having made a decision. I did not serve Marcus with papers immediately. I know that surprises people when I tell them. But Patricia had been clear, I needed to document, organize, and position before he had any idea what was coming. Any confrontation before I was ready would cost me. Men like Marcus, men who are charming and careless with other people's feelings and genuinely shocked when there are consequences, they are not strategic. But they are reactive. And a reactive person who feels cornered is dangerous in ways that are hard to predict. So I waited. And while I waited, I worked. I contacted the mortgage lender. As the sole primary on the account, I had options I had never investigated because I had never needed to. I began investigating them now. I contacted the leasing company about the vehicles. Again, sole account holder. Options. I called the business line of credit. This one was more complicated because Marcus was the operational guarantor even though I had co-signed. I had a very long, very careful conversation with our account manager, and then another very long, very careful conversation with Patricia. I also, quietly, opened a new personal checking account at a different bank. TD, not the RBC account we shared. I had my direct deposit from my firm redirected. Gently, paperwork filed on a Tuesday morning, effective the following pay period. I want to be clear about something. I am not telling you this to celebrate it. I am telling you this because I think we have been taught, women especially, that silence means you're doing nothing. That if you're not screaming, not confronting, not sending the texts and making the scenes, you are being passive. You are letting someone walk over you. I was not passive. I was precise. There is a difference. The weeks that followed were strange. Marcus came home most evenings. Sometimes he was distracted and quiet. Sometimes he was almost himself telling the girls stories at dinner, laughing at something on television, reaching out once to touch my hand across the kitchen counter. I let him. I didn't pull away. I didn't want him to know the temperature had changed. Lily started asking questions. Though. She was 12. And 12-year-olds are not easily fooled. Is everything okay with you and Dad? She asked one Saturday morning when we were making pancakes and Marcus was still asleep. I cracked an egg into the bowl and thought about what to say. I'm working through some things, I told her finally. But I want you to know whatever happens between Dad and me, that is between Dad and me. You are not responsible for any of it. You understand? She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Danielle's been texting him a lot. I poured the batter into the pan. How do you know that? His phone goes off at night. He takes it into the bathroom. She paused. I'm not stupid, Mom. I know you're not, I said. You are one of the smartest people I have ever met. She leaned into my side and I put my arm around her, and we stood there by the stove, watching the pancakes bubble, and I thought. This is why I didn't start screaming in the lobby of the Fairmont. Not for myself. For her. Because she needed to be able to finish her childhood in a home that felt safe long enough for me to ensure that what came next was stable. I filed for separation in November. The papers were served to Marcus on a Wednesday morning, after the girls had left for school, delivered by a process server to his office because Patricia had advised against doing it at home. He called me 7 times in 40 minutes. I let it go to voicemail. When I finally picked up on the 8th call, he was not angry. He was frightened, which I had not entirely predicted. Sarah. What is this? It's a legal document, I said. Patricia Hennessy's number is in the paperwork if you want to discuss the details with your own counsel. You can't, the house is Sarah, everything is. I know, I said. That's rather the point. He came home that evening. I had the girls at my sister's house. He sat at our kitchen table and he looked at me for a long time with an expression I didn't have a name for, not guilt exactly, not grief exactly, something collapsed and confused. I didn't think you would actually do it, he said. I know, I said. I thought. He stopped. Started again. I thought you needed me. And there it was. The whole architecture of his understanding of our marriage, in one sentence. He had believed that my steadiness was dependence. That because I was the one who kept the house running and the accounts organized and the appointments scheduled and the children alive and flourishing, I was the one who couldn't survive without him. He had confused the person doing the holding with the person being held. I think you should stay somewhere else for a while, I said. I'll let you know when we've scheduled the first mediation session. He opened his mouth. Closed it. Looked around the kitchen I had chosen, the house I had mortgaged, the curtains I had hung, the drawings by Sophie still stuck to the fridge with magnets from the farmer's market. He left. I sat at the kitchen table for 20 minutes after the door closed. Then I made myself dinner, opened a bottle of Ontario Pinot Noir that I had been saving for something, and called my sister to let her know everything had gone calmly, and could she bring the girls home. The months that followed were not easy. I want to say that clearly because I think sometimes these stories collapse time in a way that makes it seem like the moment you decide something, the difficult part is over. It is not. There were nights I couldn't sleep. There were parent-teacher nights where Marcus and I sat on opposite sides of the classroom and Lily stared at the floor. There was a February afternoon where Sophie cried for 45 minutes because she wanted both her parents at her school play, and I didn't know how to explain to her that she would have both of us there, just not together, and I held her and cried too, quietly, into her hair. But there were other things too. There was the morning in January when I woke up and realized I had slept for 8 hours uninterrupted, which had not happened in longer than I could remember. There was the afternoon I rearranged the entire bedroom, moved the furniture, bought new bedding, hung a print I had always loved that Marcus thought was too feminine. There was the moment Patricia called to tell me that the mediation had concluded in my favor on every significant financial point, that the house would remain in my name, that the support arrangement was fair and enforceable, and that Marcus's lawyer had ultimately advised him not to contest any of it because the financial documentation I had brought to that first meeting had been, in her words, unusually thorough. "You really have done this before," she said, and I could hear the smile. "I've just always kept good records," I said. By spring, Marcus had moved into a condo in Centertown. Danielle Moreau, I heard through a mutual friend, had stopped returning his calls sometime around February, approximately 1 month after he had realized that the lifestyle he had been performing for her was underwritten entirely by a woman who had quietly removed her signature from it. I did not feel triumphant about this. I want to be honest about that. I felt tired, mostly. And then, slowly, as the snow melted and the maple tree in the backyard turned green again, I began to feel something that was lighter than tired. The girls adjusted. Better than I expected, and in the ways that mattered. Lily, who had been quieter and more watchful in the winter, came back to herself by April. She started a photography club at her school. She showed me her pictures, sometimes the light through leaves, the shadow of a fence on snow, and I thought, she is going to be okay. She already is. Sophie asked me once, directly, in the way that 8-year-olds ask things without preamble, without cushioning, whether I still loved Daddy. I thought about it. Really thought. "I love that he's your father," I said. "And I love the years we had when things were good. But people can love each other and still not be right for each other. Do you understand?" She seemed to consider this seriously. Then she said, "Do you think you'll meet someone who is right for you?" "Maybe someday," I said. "Right now I'm pretty happy with exactly where I am." This was true. It surprised me, but it was true. I went back to Quebec City the following October. Just the 3 of us, me, Lily, and Sophie. We stayed at the same hotel, because I refused to let a memory I loved become a memory I avoided. We walked Petite Champlain again and ate maple taffy again and stood at the top of the Dufferin Terrace in the same cold wind that came off the river. This time, no one was holding my hand out of worry. Sophie held my hand because she felt like it, swinging it a little as we walked, and Lily walked on my other side with her camera, finding the light in everything. I stood at that railing and looked out at the street Lawrence, the same water I had stared at a year before from a hotel window while I built something he couldn't see yet. He had thought my silence was nothing. He had no idea that silence, in the right hands, is the loudest thing in the world.